Time is not on our side, so I will quickly rush through what we will not have time to discuss. The ranking and classifying of maqasid, which are the most important of the maqasid, like justice, etc. Like those maqasid that deal with protecting darura, protecting life, protecting wealth, protecting religion. And then followed by the haja, and then followed by the tahsini. Tahsini are maqasid also. Why? Because if a society is living with tahsini, it's ready to help other societies. If as an individual you are living with your tahsini, some level of luxury, you can give zakat. But if you yourself are facing haja, how can you help anybody? It becomes more difficult. So even though tahsini is luxuries, embellishments, it's still a maqasid of Sharia. Haja refers to those things that are not necessities for life, but they are supporting the darura. Your education is a haja. Marriage is a haja. It's not darura. Transport, business, all these are under the hajiyat. Whereas those things that are life-threatening are treated as darura. In weighing greater or lesser evils, the scholars understand that in real life, the decision is not always as simple as what is good and what is bad. There's always which is a greater and which is a lesser evil. Normal decision making, if it was simple good and bad, nearly anybody can make that decision. The Quran, easy to guide on those issues. The difficulty where you now need a scholar is where it's not as simple as right and wrong. Yeah. It is where the decision has some benefit. This is harm, and this is benefit. So this is positive, and this is negative. So where the benefit is greater than the harm, we say something is good. Where the harm is greater than the benefit, we say it's bad. Alcohol has benefit, but the harm is greater than the benefit. Okay? We've got sisters here and brothers here. Could this lead to fitna? Maybe. Could it lead to something good? The chance of it leading to good is probably higher than the harm. So we say it's good. So in most decisions by the scholars, it's not as simple as good and bad. When it comes to deciding is something a greater evil or a lesser evil, they look at how many people is it going to affect before you say it's bad. This will affect many people. This will only affect a few people. This is bad, that is bad. But this is a greater bad than this one. But the severity. This one will only affect a few people, but they will die. This will affect many people, but nobody will die. So which is the greater or lesser evil? It gets more complicated. This is short term. This is long term. But even though this is long term, it's reversible. The other one is irreversible damage. And then what are the side effects, the consequences? And this is where scholars move into Sadd al-Daraya and Fathu al-Daraya, considering consequences. Even if something is bad, if we allow it, would it lead to greater bad? If so, we will block it. But if it's bad, and we say it's bad, it's haram for a woman to expose herself to a male. But it's a doctor, and it's to diagnose for cancer. It's haram, but if you don't do it, you may lead to greater harm. So they are concerned about the severity and also the probability. Men and women learning in the same hall. It may lead to fitna. That's haram. It may lead to marriage. That is sunnah. Which one will it more likely lead to? It's not to depend on the optimism or pessimism of the particular scholar. So somebody may come from my society and say, no, this is not acceptable. But somebody in your society, come on man, we've been doing this all the time, we don't have a problem. In your society it's new, in our society it's part of our urf, no problem. That's why you can't outsource a mufti. Yeah, you can't get somebody to give you fatwa here and that person comes from another country and doesn't understand your urf and whether something will actually lead to a haram or not. Fathu al-Daraya. something that may lead to benefit, but it itself would have been haram, as we gave the example of the medical case. When a society is faced with darura, haram becomes halal, except probably suicide or killing somebody, like murder. But even Imam Malik would say, if killing 1/3 of the population would save 2/3 of the population, then it is the lesser evil, the greater good. It's bad, but which is greater, which is less? It's not between good and bad. No, it's between greater and lesser evil, or better and lesser good. So Fatwa Daraya is where they consider rukhsa, darura, haja as reasons to permit certain things. We can't go into the conditions for rukhsa. When does darura allow things to be halal? When does a haja allow things to be halal? But here they distinguish between types of haram. Haram that is something that is haram in and of itself, like zina, and something that is haram because it may lead to zina, like removing of hijab, is haram because of what it may lead to. Being alone with a man is haram because of what it may lead to. So certain times, certain conditions, something that is haram, like zina, is haram absolutely. And if you face a haja, you are not allowed. The only time is only if somebody has put a gun to your head, probably. However, when you are faced with a haja, you don't have cancer, but it's good to check just in case you have. It's not a darura you are in, it's a haja. Haja would allow certain things that are haram, not in themselves, but haram because they may lead to haram. Because in that situation, the person in a haja is viewed as having or facing a situation where the probability of it leading to the haram is not as serious as leading to a benefit. So there are other times when haja may allow things that are haram to be temporarily halal. You forgive me for us not going through this. Bin Bayya in his book Fatwa Sana'i, number of these scholars in Usul go into this subject in more detail. What to do when scholars differ? We come to the conclusion. When scholars differ on a particular topic, unfortunately, the scholars differ on what to do. Doesn't make our job easier. Some scholars would say you do what they call tarjih. Tarjih means you look for the strongest opinion based on the Quran, Sunnah, and the tools of Usul al Fiqh and Maqasid. In other words, review the evidence of this scholar, the dalil or hujjah that this scholar brings, review the other one, and you decide in your context which is stronger. But to do that, you need to be a scholar yourself. Yeah, you know, like, it's like you're not a doctor, but you want to say which doctor is right, which one is wrong. Yeah, so not everybody does that. You need somebody who is really knowledgeable, who can understand the argument the scholars put, respects the differences, but is able to say this one appears to be stronger. So, while that is considered the best way to do things, it's unfortunately not an easy way for most of us. Because we don't even have the tools of usul. We don't understand the formulae of the various scholars. But if you do, then of course that's an option. Some would say, you go with what they call the maqasid, the maslahah. And this particularly for the case of an imam, a caliph, a leader judges things in accordance with what is in the best interest of his community. What solves the problem? So it's like istihsan. It's where you use maqasid as your compass. There's this fatwa, this fatwa, this fatwa. Which one solves your problem? Go with that one. Some scholars suggest, go with your madhab. Why? Because they say that is the madhab that is operating in the court. If you have a problem and is to go to court, better know your madhab and follow your madhab. Otherwise, you'll have problems in court. And if this is the madhab of the land, and that's what the scholars know, and if you need help in anything, then follow the madhab of the land. Or follow your madhab, but not pick and choose from various madhabs. Now, we find, as we said, in Islamic finance, in Hajj, in a number of areas, you find scholars picking from here, choosing from there. The difference is, the scholars have no problem if you are picking from this madhab or that madhab to achieve a maqasid. Their fear is if you want to achieve mafsada. You want to just get your way to do something haram, but you can do it by wriggling between the schools of law. And they give a common example. In Shafi, if you want to get married, you don't have to give any money. You just promise you will give money, and it's okay in the Shafi madhab. In the Maliki madhab, she can get a representative, he can get a representative for the marriage. You don't have to be there at the marriage. For the Hanafi, the woman doesn't need a wali. If she's reached an age of maturity, she's 16 years old, 18 years old, she can sell her property, she can sell herself in marriage. So she doesn't need a wali. What does that mean? It means you can pick from all madhabs and have a marriage where, okay, your friends conducted the marriage, you didn't give anything, you'll give it later, and your parents don't know anything about it. You know, everybody will say, wait a minute, this is zina, this is not accepted. All madhabs will disagree. Why? Because you pick from here because you want a mafsada, you want to achieve a haram. And so many scholars discourage people, particularly in mu'amalat, from picking and choosing. But as we gave example in Maqasid, it's in Islamic finance and number areas, even though these are mu'amalat, or like Hajj, even though it's mu'amalat, they do what they call talfiq, which is mixing of opinions if it will achieve the maqasid of the Sharia more effectively. For some scholars, go with the majority of opinion. And they use the arguments for ijma to say Allah's hand is with the jama'ah. In other words, go with the jama'ah. My ummah will not agree on error, and so they would go with the majority opinion. There's safety in numbers. Some would suggest go with the specialist. Is it a medical issue? Is it an Islamic finance? You don't ask any ustaz about Islamic finance. There's a specialized issue. Yeah. Is it about inheritance? Yeah. It's not everybody who knows how to divide inheritance. Yeah. It's a specialized field. So, on issues to do with siyasa, on issues to do with this and that, there are some specialized scholars. Some would say, go with the local scholar. Yeah. Be very careful about a fatwa given to you by somebody who came from Nigeria or somewhere else. Why? He doesn't know your urf, doesn't know your priorities. Yeah. You need somebody from here who knows the situation to give fatwa. And you find Imam Malik, a number of these scholars, did not like giving fatwa, particularly on mu'amalat, to people who came from distant places. They would tell them, ask your own scholars down there. Some scholars would suggest, go with the easiest opinion. Which one is easy? Why? Because Allah says, Allahu yuridu bikumul yusra. Allah wants ease for you. The Prophet ﷺ said, Yassir wa la tu'assir. Make things easy for people. Don't make them difficult. Aisha said the Prophet, when given choices between two things that were halal, he would choose the easier option. So sometimes you are faced with a convert or a Muslim who is finding it difficult to practice a particular aspect of Islam. Even though you prefer another opinion, make it easy for this person. Somebody has not prayed for 2 months. He had a dream, he heard a lecture, whatever, he decided, I want to start praying now. Or maybe he hasn't prayed for 6 months. But he finds it difficult to pray. Should he pay back all his 6 months of prayer? Or do you go with a Hanbali opinion, one of which is, you know what, just do istighfar for that one and carry on praying from now. So where scholars differ, make things easy for people. And finally, not finally, but following leadership. Atiullah wa atiur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. Obey Allah, the Prophet and those in charge. If the leadership is not making you to do a haram or prohibiting you from a fard, you follow them. Ibn Abidin said, even if they are telling you to do a makruh or they are forbidding you from doing a mustahab, because there is no sin incurred, it becomes permissible to follow leadership. Lastly, follow your conscience. The Prophet ﷺ said in one narration, Istafta qalbuk walau aftaka walau aftaka al-maftun. Consult your conscience, even if people give you fatwa upon fatwa upon fatwa. Ultimately, you are the one who will meet Allah. You are the one who, your actions will be judged by your intentions. You will be the one to answer for whether you decided to go with the majority, the local scholar, or a combination of these. As we conclude, therefore, when scholars differ, yes, we would find the situation would help you decide on what to do. But please remember, unity in diversity, the greater good of unity in this ummah. These differences that we've been discussing today, they are not new. They existed before we were born. They are over 1,000 years old. Some of the differences of opinion started from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, even during the time of the Prophet, he wanted to fight the Battle of Uhud outside, in the city of Medina. The majority and the younger ones preferred to fight it outside at Uhud. He went with them. So there were differences of opinion from the time of the Prophet, during the time of the Sahaba. We should remember, وَأَتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, we hold on to Allah's rope together. That's the greater maqasid. Otherwise, when we divide over difference of opinion, our strength leaves us. Anybody is able to trample over us. Difference of opinion does not imply disunity. Unity did not mean uniformity. Fingers are not equal, but they learn to work together. The tongue and the teeth sometimes clash. The cheeks clash with the tongue or clash with the cheek sometimes, but they learn to work together. We clash, but let's remember the greater maqasid of unity that binds us. Let's remember, however certain we are of our opinions, we could be wrong. As Imam Shafi would say, I believe I'm right with the possibility that I'm wrong. And I believe the other person is wrong with the possibility that he could be right. And he had a beautiful dua where he would say, he prays that Allah shows him the truth on the tongue of his opponent. Not on his tongue. Yeah, on the tongue of his opponent. This is a humble person praying that Allah shows him the truth through other people. We should remain curious, try to learn, humble that we are never all-knowing. It's always Allahu Alam. And sincere and committed in our search for Allah. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khairan for your patience. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.